authorized to fire at will.
Hey, it's Saturday morning. Yeah, Saturday morning. Another episode of Libertarian Lowdown here on MBRR Media. Thanks for tuning in. If you know from wherever you're watching, YouTube, Rumble, make sure that. Oh, hey, I forgot. I can do this now. We can now show comments live in the stream. So mods, when you do get here, channel moderators, you know my rules. I don't believe in censoring people, but if somebody starts throwing out ethnically biased comments, we do not tolerate. I have no desire to have that going on with my channel. So I hate identity politics, and so we won't be doing that here. So anyway, thanks for being here. We're gonna get the tertiary and ancillary stuff out of the way. We're gonna all the channel shout outs. So shout out to all the channel members. If you're looking to support the work that I do and you want to help me keep it going, channel memberships are a big way of doing that. You can also go to Subscribestar, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, and you can join there. I'm looking for some people to replace my show producer credit level, and you come in at the top level of support, you will get credit as a show producer. You won't actually have to do any work, which is great if you're a show producer to get credit for being a show producer. You just have to come in at the support level, at the top tier support level, and we'll shout you out. And if there's anything you ever want to promote, just let me know. And as long as in keeping with the theme of the channel, we'll promote it. So also, all the channel members, thank you so much for what you do, but also the subscribers and the regular watchers. You do this long enough. If you do this long enough, you realize that a lot of times you'll get a lot of subscribers, but a lot of your viewers aren't your subscribers. So I really appreciate the fact that people come back and watch, even if they're not channel subscribers. And if you are a subscriber, make sure you're clicking that bell icon so that you're getting all the notifications for the content. We have somebody swing through. Buster Cheeks, what's the theme? Well, Buster, we're going to be talking to a young man. I can say that he is young compared to me. We're going to be talking to a young man named Olver, who I had the privilege of meeting just briefly at the Charlie Kirk Memorial event on September 18th in Rochester, Minnesota. And he reached out to me afterwards, and we got to chatting, and I found out he was running for Congress in the 1st District in Minnesota, which is southeast corridor area of Minnesota. And he's challenging the status quo. He's running as an independent, so that means he's kind of stepping into the ring to run as a challenger to the Democrats and to the Republicans. And he's got a lot of really solid views. And I thought, hey, it's in keeping with, especially with this series on MBRR Media, the Libertarian Lowdown. It's actually really in keeping with what I do. And I love to talk to people who are running for office. And I believe in activism. And I believe in putting good people in positions to run for office that are going to remain consistent to their values. So we'll be bringing Olver on here in just a minute. Just a heads up to everybody about some stories that I'm covering. One, we're still working on Blake Mosted's story and how he was paralyzed by Minnesota State Trooper Ryan Moser, and the fact that Ryan Moser got away with his criminally negligent, criminally violent behavior back on April 9th. Not even so much as a slap on the wrist. And Blake has left paralyzed from the neck down. We're still covering that story. Have some irons in the fire with that, working on getting some dash cam video from the trooper who was going better than 125 miles an hour. When we get that, if we get that, we will be doing a breakdown of that dash cam video to show why it is criminally negligent on the part of the justice system in Minnesota to have let Trooper Ryan Moser go free without charging him. I'm also going to be releasing videos very soon of a medical kidnapping that was conducted by a local county social services and a police officer. And it is a medical kidnapping. There's just no other way around it. And this individual, this infant child, has been snatched from her family, and now they're being run through the ringer through the courts to try and get their very own child back, despite having done no harm to the child. They were not abusing the child. No one accused them of being abusive. It's nothing more than a medical kidnapping based on the fact that a doctor said that the child wasn't thriving. So we're covering that story. And I'm also covering the story of a young man out of north central-ish Minnesota who disappeared back in July of 2020. Just disappeared. He had an interaction with law enforcement. They were the last people to see him alive. And it's been 5 years, 5+ years now, and he's never shown up. And the local sheriff's office is claiming that he ran away, not ran away like a runaway child. He just took off from the cops, and allegedly he's just in hiding for 5 years. So, and that's all they've done for an investigation, that he's just in hiding. And so we're working on that story. I've got some body cam footage from that altercation or that incident, and we have some reports that we're breaking down. And my researcher is, a volunteer. She does everything for free for me, and she's phenomenal. But we're pulling a lot of strings on a lot of these things together. So be tuning in for that. And if you want to see a very interesting breakdown of the current kerfuffle in especially in conservative politics, yesterday I did a live stream where I broke down Victor Davis Hanson's take on what he calls rising anti-Semitism in the conservative movement. And I demonstrate that this apparently incredibly erudite and scholarly man was operating from a place of emotion and anti-intellectualism with the assertions that he was making. And so that's up on the channel from yesterday. So I'd really appreciate everybody checking that out. It's very easy to find. It was fun to do, actually. I actually had a fun with it. I thought it was going to be one of those videos where I was going to be angry, and it was frustrating, but I actually was able to enjoy it and make it enjoyable for myself. And sometimes all I care about is whether or not I'm enjoying the video. Whether or not you enjoy it isn't as important to me as it is for me to just enjoy it. So without any further ado, we're going to bring in Oliver. Oliver, thanks for being here today. Oh,
it's great to be here.
No, you say that now. So,
well, I think we have a lot of maybe some shared values. So I'm always glad to debate people. Always glad to have discussions with people, honest conversations, and that's why we were both there at the vigil.
I don't think we'll get to the. I don't think. Well, we'll see. You might provoke the debater in me. I don't know. No, so yeah, we met at the Charlie Kirk vigil on September 18th. So a week and a day after he was assassinated, and it was interesting because I didn't really beeline towards. Was it your sister and a friend?
Yeah, that was her and her boyfriend there.
Okay, I didn't really beeline per se, but you guys caught my eye because you weren't, shall we say, you didn't have the normative appearance of the majority of the audience. You're obviously, you and your sister appear to be Caucasian, but you have longer hair. Your sister has a little bit more body alt type stuff going on, and her boyfriend is a minority. So I'm like, this is very interesting. I want to talk to these guys and find out what brings them here. And we had a very brief but very interesting conversation. It's, I cut my interaction with you guys out and put it up as a short and got a lot of interesting and like in a positive way, feedback from people messaging me saying it's really good to see this younger generation, and there again, you're drastically younger than I am. So it's very interesting and good to see this younger generation not just, have some political views, but to be willing to show up to a thing like a Charlie Kirk vigil or memorial and be present and be seen. And so, props to you guys for doing that. And you said there that you'd been listening to Charlie for years. He
Yeah,
wasn't
I've
just
been on.
new on your radar.
I've been listening to Charlie probably since about 2016. I would say.
Right when he first
And
came on
then
scene.
other voices on there. Yeah, so I've seen him do a lot of his talks and seen a lot of where he's gone and everything. And when he got assassinated, that was, it was a really hard day. I mean, I saw a lot of people having all their mixed reactions to it, and I just thought it was a really good idea to come out and kind of just support unity, kind of come out and support, like, it's not okay to just shoot people in America for having a different opinion than yourself, or coming out and wanting to have an honest conversation like Charlie did in a lot of his videos. And I just felt it was a good idea to come out and support that.
What, how did you first discover Charlie, and what drew you to, listening to him and watching him?
Well, it was kind of just, I've always been sort of politically neutral in a way. Since I was a kid, my parents being small business owners, and then me being kind of going into small business myself, I just have kind of a more fiscally conservative, I would say, but also a little bit socially liberal positions in certain circumstances. So I'd listen to a lot of like alternative media, people that would be like doing like YouTube, it's kind of my generation. A lot of just watching
Yes, I am
content creators and
definitely
stuff like that.
encroaching on your I'm definitely encroaching on your generation's space, and I'm fine with that. So
It's full. It's fine. It's. I think we were just kind of raised in an era where we were exposed to a lot of things, and it could go either or to the left or to the right. I kind of stayed in the middle because I always wanted to see both perspectives, and I always just kind of challenged myself to like research into things, and I feel like that's where he kind of gained an audience and people who would do those, be honest and have like conversations in that manner.
were you finding yourself challenged by the things that Charlie was saying? What was he making arguments on his show and in his content where he was going out to college campuses and debating? Were you finding yourself challenged and swayed by him, or were you finding yourself like, okay, he makes good points, but I'm honing my arguments based on what I'm hearing from him?
Well, I would say that in my opinion, we would hold a lot of very similar values when it comes to just like American values, like the idea of like patriotism, traditionalism. I hold those sort of values. I would disagree with Charlie Kirk on certain things when it came to more of the kind of establishment conservative like causes that we are more or less experiencing in 2025. But other than that, I mean, the way that he would present himself and the way that he would articulate his arguments, it was always very compelling. And I always thought that he had very good discussions with people, and he changed a lot of people's minds. And I would say I agree with him on quite a bit, but there would be like certain things, like I said, like establishment conservative politics that I might be like a little bit backed up on
That's
with his
actually a
arguments.
really interesting, I don't know if we would call it a rabbit trail, but it's definitely a good thread to pull. So when you talk about these establishment, conservative establishment philosophies or perspectives, what are some areas where you might see yourself differing from them, whether it be, economics or social concerns?
Well, necessarily with Charlie, it might not have been a disagreement, but I would be more vocally open about the GOP, how they've kind of betrayed fiscal conservatism in a way. by
Kinda.
overbloating the budget. Yeah, it's
What?
it's
Kinda.
gotten pretty bad. Yeah, they I mean, we've seen it with the big beautiful bill. We've seen it with a lot of omnibus packages that's been, spent on both parties. Both sides, they don't really care about conserving money or conserving really anything that goes on with this country. So establishment like Republican policies, like I would call them out more than what I would think Charlie Kirk did, because he wanted to kind of maintain a conservative, like united front, like when it came to the kind of Republican establishment. But I sit more in the neutral zone where I don't want to. I don't endorse Republicans fully. I was formally registered as a Republican in 2016. Um,
Was
but
that your first? That was your first year to be eligible to vote?
No, actually, I was that before I was eligible to vote, because you can be 16 in the state of Minnesota to be a primary delegate.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
so
Now
I
you
went to Duluth and I voted for an alternative candidate, but
you just made me feel really old, and I don't think we can be friends. That no, that was before I was eligible to vote. You old fogey. Now, like, I'm not even anywhere near being a boomer, but now I just feel like a boomer. So thanks, Oliver.
Yeah, I was my year is pretty easy. I was born in 2000, so I just go by the year.
That does. I was born in the 70s, so that literally didn't. Yeah. Wow.
Well, that's about my dad's age.
Wow. Oh gosh.
It's okay. It's okay.
We are going to destroy your campaign now after that. No, so so you're at least fiscally conservative, and you're seeing problems in the GOP with fiscal conservatism. And there's a lot of lip service to being, small government, apparently free market capitalists, which we know they're not. The GOP is not a free market capitalist organization by any stretch of the imagination. I tell people all the time, like, the GOP is mostly mostly mercantilist, which is an incredibly outdated and very dangerous, economic position for people to take, which is why it's always the GOP wanting to bail out big business, and
exactly. Yeah, I would notice that with the GOP, just with not just spending money like erratically on all these different pet projects, but just how they don't necessarily hold to any positions that they do hold. I mean, there are things that they say that they try and like steal from maybe their own base, and they kind of,
Are you talking about like
build their
talking point positions that they look at their base, the base is talking about X, and they're like, oh yeah, I hold to that, but ultimately they don't. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and I think that there was it's both sides. You've got Democrats who promise a lot of things. You've got Republicans who promise a lot of things. But overall, I mean, we've seen this time and time again with I mean, we've seen it with the last administration, with a lot of the promises that they would make. They tried to
You're referring to the Biden-Harris admin?
Yes, they would promise that they wanted to take away people's student loan debt, which I'm not necessarily for forgiveness. I think that we have to really look at the actual economics behind that before we just start handing out more and more money. There is, and then with this administration, we've seen a lot of
don't forget too that
we're going to reduce some.
The Republicans and even MAGA were very much against that, but now Trump wants to do it too.
It's a lot of flip-flopping. There's a lot of like going back and forth between what seems to be popular and what seems to not be popular. And it gets kind of tiring when you look at it in politics. And I think that's why a lot of people feel just disenfranchised at this point.
When you approach the fiscal conservative perspective of, who you are, do you have influences outside of your life experience? Like, have you read any economists? Have you read, Friedman? Have you read, Ludwig von Mises? Have you, are you Keynesian? Like, everybody knows Keynes, right? But
Right.
But do they really know anything
I've read
about
some,
other than what the
yeah.
school taught you about him? And
Yeah, I've read Smith, I've read Keynes,
Adam
I've
Smith,
read
really?
I've
Wow.
read all the way up to, I've even read Marx. I just to see what it was about. I don't
Oh,
agree
no,
with
hey,
communism, but I do. I read everything just to make sure that
you
I see
don't
all
need to
perspectives.
you don't need to clarify your position when you say, "Well, I don't agree with him, but I've read him." Like, no, I think it's really good to read. And for anybody, since we're talking about economics, if anybody's interested, Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt is a phenomenal book. I would strongly encourage everybody to go out and invest in a copy of it and read it. I was doing it kind of as a reading on my channel for a while, but for my channel members, but my channel members were like, so it's a great book, and it actually really dives deep into in a very simple way. It dives deep into Austrian economics, which is
Right.
Ludwig von Mises has, and it has a strong influence on the Chicago School of Economics. Um, so you've read a lot of different economic theorists, and where have you found yourself settling in that camp?
Well, yeah, out of all of it, I still kind of stay where I've always been, where it's like free market capitalism, not necessarily full on laissez-faire. Um, I think there's room for some regulation, but I don't necessarily agree with this overburdening approach that we have with government today, where we're going to regulate business, where we regulate businesses that we don't like, and then we allow people who have a lot of money to get away by going through loopholes, and then they can just go around the system.
A la crony
I'm more
capitalism or
for,
mercantilism again.
yeah, I don't want to, that stuff is just it's too much. I think a lot of what really needs to happen with capitalism, it's kind of what Benjamin Franklin said about the country. If it's a republic, if you can keep it, it's
Yeah.
kind of a free market capitalistic society if you can keep it.
Isn't
There
it?
needs to be
Don't
a lot
you
of maybe.
go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh, I was just it's kind of a deal that maybe like an intelligent consumer base, kind of pushing forward our more like kind of being out there and expressing what we want as consumers, and kind of like enforcing regulations in our own way by being out there and being unified in a way can also help drive economies. So it's not just a government. You don't just drive the economy through the government. You don't drive the economy through the government. You're supposed to drive the economy through actions that the consumers take. And I think that that's something we've gotten away from in our like kind of our modern society. We just think we just go with the flow as consumers, and the government's kind of teetered that, and they've kind of like made it that way where people think, well, we kind of rely on the government for benefits. We rely on the government for a lot of things, like on subsidiaries for a lot of these companies, um, subsidies for these companies. And so now the economy kind of just works in link with the government when it's not really supposed to. It's supposed to just be its own driving
Bingo.
force.
Which is really, I point this out to so many people, like especially with a lot of the talk about anti-fascism today. We should all be anti-fascist, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, at the risk of, when BLM was, before they got exposed for their nefarious business practices, ironically, it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. I believe we should all be anti-fascist, and in what that means to be actively anti-fascist is to recognize that our government, no matter who's in the office, whether it be Trump or Biden and Harris or whoever your pick for the bad guy is, our government, especially at the federal level, is effectively a fascistic government, in that it ultimately has control over the economy and can determine what businesses can and cannot do. And most recently, in one case, we saw that play out with COVID, when Trump declared the national emergency. I hate saying national because we're not a nation per se, definitionally, but declared a countrywide emergency, and then they enacted the Defense Authorization Act, which was to be able to go in and order private business under threat of penalty, to stop producing the things they normally produce to produce what the government tells them they have to. And without fail, every one of those businesses caved into the threats hanging over their heads to produce PPE and all of that, because they didn't want to lose their positions of privilege that had been granted to them by the government. And then when the bailout happened during COVID, it was giant corporations that received all that money. It was the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the world, not just in the United States, but the single largest transfer of wealth from the middle class, the working middle class, from the working poor middle class to the not working poor, but still not super comfortable middle class, to the elite wealthy. And I'm not talking people making $100,000 a year or more, where they now define that as wealthy. I'm talking the elite wealthy, the top 10% billionaires in this country.
Yeah.
Under the Trump administration. And that came as a combination of Republicans and Democrats agreeing to do it. That was the direction they wanted to take our country. And so
this is just another example of how they talk about, like, with government overreach. A lot of people think that, well, especially a more left-leaning position would be to think that the way we kind of stop this growth and wealth of these billionaires is we use government to take them down. But in reality, more government overreach we've seen over the years has actually increased the amount that these billionaires, these elite people, have had by giving them, essentially socialist subsidies. I mean, a lot of the things that we do in this country with the government handing out billions of dollars every year, I mean, with the 2008 financial crisis, the way that we had BlackRock managing that, and then we bailed out all these banks and all these corporations. It's the idea of being too big to fail. That doesn't scream capitalism to me. That screams socialism. That's not necessarily a marker of a healthy economy either. We need these corporations to be there, but why can't they stand on their own feet? Why? We already know from everything that's come out since the 2008 financial crisis that it was their fault to begin with. So,
oh yeah, I mean, and it's nice to be able to engage with somebody who understands this and is approaching it from a reasonable perspective. You said you believe there should be some regulation. I'm admittedly, my utopian ideal as a paleo-libertarian / libertarian is anarcho-capitalism. I don't think there should be any government regulation on the economy at all. Because every time you open the door to any kind of government regulation of economic means and measures, you start the snowball effect that we see today, which is they have control of everything. And look at what we refer to as, affectionately, if you want to use that term, as Obamacare, which was apparently supposed to make all healthcare more affordable, literally priced people right into the poorhouse. And, by the way, penalized you for many years if you didn't do what the government told you, which was you had to buy health insurance.
There was for years, my family had healthcare in Minnesota before, I believe it was Dayton at the time, when he put in he didn't necessarily have Obamacare itself come into the state. They kind of made their own version of it, as I remember at the time. And then they kind of implemented it into our health bureaucracy. So in like around 2012-ish, that's when my family, like my parents, my sister, like we all lost health insurance. And then we just kind of,
because you guys your parents own small business. They're small business owners. And
yes.
Without getting into details about which ones, but they're small business owners. And what a lot of people don't understand is that as small business owners, you might be able to provide health insurance benefits to employees if you have them. But a lot of times you can't be covered under that same policy. And so
exactly.
I'm assuming your family was having to buy health insurance on the individual market for your family prior to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was on the individual market, and then when that came through, it was hard to even get in contact with anybody after the change. I think just the system just got messed up. I think a lot of people didn't know what to do, and that's what happens when you roll in government, like massive government regulations overnight and expect the system to change. And then, and then you go 10. I still to this day, I don't have health insurance to this day. It's been intermittent. I don't pay for it because I don't necessarily need it. So, but back then we were getting penalized for it, thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we went through that where, my previous career, like we had a good health plan, but it got incredibly expensive. And I was working in a government position, and full disclosure, I was a detention deputy in Olmsted County for almost 13 years. And when the Affordable Care Act kicked in, our premiums went up, and it just got to the point where I'm like, I can't afford this. So I opted out of insurance and took the penalties. And we still don't have health insurance coverage. And so it has been a nightmare for anybody who's been in or out of the system. It's just been a nightmare. And there again, what are we dealing with? You're dealing with government overreach. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of hearing, people like me say, look, I don't believe in government regulation of pretty much anything. And them saying, well, that's chaos. And I'm like, it's not chaos. You would have to go a really long way to show me how government regulation itself isn't causing chaos. To me, I see it everywhere. And that's because I'm an old fuddy-duddy. So I'm just an old fuddy-duddy that doesn't like government chaos, as opposed to if I'm going to have to deal with chaos, I'd rather deal with it on an individual private level than have it imposed on me by people with the authority to throw me in jail for not wanting to take part in their chaos. But so you find yourself being, I would say, probably the way you're describing it, you're less of a economic centrist and far more of a free market economics person, willing to capitulate to a small degree on some government oversight, as long as that government oversight's reined in,
kept like strictly in check.
Strictly in check. You had mentioned, as we first started talking, that you might find yourself maybe a little bit less on the conservative side on some social issues. Are there areas in particular where you would find yourself differing with the normative GOP positions that people automatically assume are conservative?
Well, I would say one thing that's we saw this with the federal budget that they just passed, that they're now passing to reopen the government.
Oh, the continuing resolution that they finally passed.
Now they've added this essentially a hemp ban for a lot of like different hemp products that are around the United States, and I just think that it's such a I don't mean to make it that way, but it's such a like old school Republican like viewpoint of like, we just have to ban this for like the reason is because of the alcohol lobby and a lot of these other lobbies that are out there for
the heck
why they want to to get rid of these things. But
you mean the alcohol lobby would want to ban would want the government to step in and ban the use of even recreational hemp based products like CBD to protect their market share?
Yeah, we
Oliver, you have got to stop saying these crazy conspiracy things. I'm going to have to get you a tinfoil hat. What? Come on, Oliver.
I mean, everybody knows there's these major lobbying institutions in DC, and it's just the problem is that they hide these as social problems, where it's like, we have to ban hemp because, or we have to ban these products because it's social. It's making, it's kind of the weed scare, the, reefer madness kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's still
I'm glad you
all the way back from the 20s.
I'm glad you said reefer madness, because that was the first thing I thought of. Have you, young man, have you seen their terrible propaganda movie, Reefer Madness? Have you seen that?
I don't think I've actually seen the movie. No.
When you have you ever thought, so you brought up this ban now on cannabis that, thankfully we have a year to see how it gets tested out before it goes into I'm telling everybody, take a step back and chill. I think it's terrible. It's a terrible addendum to, I don't know how it had anything to do with the continuing resolution at all. It's just typical add-on stupid garbage from, as you said, in this case, probably old fuddy-duddy Republicans or younger Republicans who are trying to appeal to the old fuddy-duddy blue-haired. And by the blue-haired, I mean old blue-haired, not the young blue-haired people, because now you can't. Used to be able to say blue-haired and everybody knew what you meant. Now you say blue-haired and they're like, okay, old blue hair or like furries in unicorn costumes with blue hair. So,
right.
Have you ever had a chance to have a conversation with somebody who comes out in favor of, marijuana being criminalized still at the federal level, and now all hemp products like CBD and Delta, what is it, Delta 8 and Delta 9 or whatever Delta level they're up to now. Have you ever had a conversation with them and asked them, then why are we not banning alcohol again? Have you ever,
yeah, I've had these conversations when I used to run in more Republican circles, like locally and on the grassroots level. There'd be some people that were like Republican supporters who would ask the question, and then there were even some candidates who would ask the question. And whenever I could, that's kind of one of my arguments is alcohol, kills this certain amount of people every year. It's dangerous to liver. It's dangerous to all of this. And it's also kind of, in my head, it's almost a constitutional argument. It's really, if we're going to if we can't ban alcohol, we've already come to this conclusion, like over actually 100 years ago now. It just seems to me that the precedent isn't there for making, especially just hemp, because hemp products are more than just marijuana products. They're products for, you can make paper out of hemp. You can make, CBD is good for a lot of people's health. There's actually a hemp farm just up the road from where I'm at. And they, the Fright Farm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of their businesses run on hemp, and there's a lot of even state regulations right now that are coming down on as they recently legalized marijuana. There's a lot of regulations coming down on them that they have to worry about.
I just stopped into the local smoke shop here in Spring Valley, which is the first and only one in Fillmore County that has been approved to sell THC or marijuana, full-fledged marijuana, in Fillmore County. And as you know, the way the legalization, which by the way, legalization is the biggest syndicate ripoff ever. They did not do it to do anything other than to fatten their pockets through the permitting process and taxation. That's it. The people who celebrated legalization of marijuana in Minnesota should have been pushing for decriminalization, is what they should have been pushing for, so that there would have been no government oversight on it at all. But no, they pushed for legalization because they sold out. But I was talking to the owner of the smoke shop in here in Spring Valley just yesterday, actually. Kind of a soft interview to see if I could have her on the show sometime to talk about some of the things that she's run into as it regards trying to sell THC. And so medicinal marijuana in Minnesota is legal, and they can get their medicinal marijuana from any source that's certified. Out of state, in state, it doesn't matter. Recreational marijuana, on the other hand, can only come from state-grown sources, and the state of Minnesota has yet to approve a single licensure for growing actual marijuana for mass production to be used for selling to the industry that they have legalized in the state of Minnesota. So they've got all these people filling out all this paperwork and jumping through all the hoops to get their dispensaries for recreational use going, and they cannot do anything because there's no supply for them to sell.
I just think about all the money that's being generated in this, all the money that's probably going to be wasted with all the. I mean, we're saying that medical marijuana will be, it's interstate, so we can get supply from different states. But with the federal government now starting to come in and start to like clamp down on, starting to act more aggressive towards weed and hemp and that kind of stuff. Now, what if they start encroaching on the states and they start like blocking interstate trap? I kind of see issues with federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, and how they might like interact in those situations. And
local law enforcement will like. It's so funny when anybody who watches the channel knows I'm highly critical of law enforcement at all levels, from municipal to county to state to federal. I'm incredibly incredibly critical, and rightly so. They need to be under an incredibly bright spotlight. But when you watch them, a lot of them are very selective in how they will or won't participate in engaging with federal law enforcement. So if you're a cop in Minneapolis, your city council and your mayor have this very tight control over your police chief, and they don't want you cooperating with ICE. So
right.
Minneapolis police aren't cooperating with ICE. And smaller rural towns, you'll see it where they'll cooperate, which it's the prerogative of the individual agencies to under certain court rulings, law enforcement agencies and even local governmental agencies are not required to take part in federal law enforcement activities, period. They're not required. They can't be forced to. But it is very interesting to see how selective they are. And without fail, almost every single rural sheriff's office in the state of Minnesota has basically hinted how much they hate the legalization of marijuana in Minnesota. And if asked to, they'll take part in federal law enforcement of cracking down on raids to end marijuana use in their counties. And that to me is, like you said, you bring up this idea like, okay, great, it's legalized in Minnesota, but the feds they still have the authority to come in. So if they see you have a grow light in your house because you're growing, your 4 plants that you're allowed to grow by law without having a license and a permit, and you're growing in your house, the feds could come in and you could still be arrested.
We've seen that with
felony crime.
I think it was a recent conversation that was going on about the for background checks for firearms and kind of the implication of I think there was a Supreme Court hearing that was supposed to happen. I'm not necessarily certain if it happened or not yet, but it was about it's already criminal to use marijuana and also possess a firearm, but they had to rule on something in the Supreme Court about that recently. I did see something about that, but it just seems there was a conversation about that beforehand where if that part of the form violates the 14th Amendment, like in criminalizing yourself by like essentially like if they can ask you whether or not you do use those certain substances or whatever. So we're getting into like constitutional territory with, can the federal government really like can the federal government use that against you, and will they use that against you? And I just see a lot of this.
The answer to that is always yes. There's no other appropriate. When the question is will the government use this against you? The answer is always yes. There's never a no answer to that, Oliver. So as you especially as we get ready to really kind of talk about your campaign to run for Congress, I want you to always remember, now that we're in each other's spheres of influence, I'm in the back of your head now. If the question ever comes up, will this be used against people? Yes, absolutely. It will be. It will always be used against the people that no one expected it to be used against, a la the Patriot Act. It's literally been used against patriots. That's so.
And they said it was supposed to be used for terrorism, but then it turned out that they were going to use it domestically, and they used it on a lot of people who then turned out that, they used it on a lot of people who it just turned out that it wasn't really that big of a deal, or it was overblown, or it was a large kind of intelligence operation, or
no.
There's We've seen things, everything from, it was just a few years ago they did this sting in Michigan, I do believe, with the
The Fednapping,
governor.
kidnapping, kill plot. Yeah.
Yeah. That one was very strange. That one where there's more federal agents on the team to do it than there is actual people who are there plotting it.
Absolutely, good friend of the show, Christine from the YouTube channel and from Twitter, Radix Verum. She goes by Radix Verum. She did a documentary. Christine did this documentary about the kidnap and kill. She calls it kidnap and kill, about the Fednapping plot, where she goes through and exposes. And it was her work doing the documentary that's really helped the people who actually refused to take plea deals. Her work really helped them get off as not guilty when they went to trial. The only people that were convicted in that situation were the guys who got so scared by the feds that they took plea deals. Everybody else was found not guilty. And that's very much a perfect example of what you're saying, which is, yeah, all this stuff gets set up and now it's being, used in a very, sneaky and underhanded way. Look at what we just found out about, most of us knew this on January 7th, that it was a Fed op. And everybody's like, you sound like you're wearing tinfoil hats, TC. And I'm like, yeah, but now we know 200 and some federal agents, to include Capitol Police, went in undercover and were actively inciting people to riot. They were encouraging people to take part in criminal activity, inciting it.
And anyone who's paid attention to,
go ahead.
Anybody's paid attention to the last 10 years of, if not longer, of the political sides of the left and the right, that there's been, when it comes to activism, the right is a lot less active. When it comes out to going out there and creating a stink and doing that, it just, that whole day, and then not just that whole day, but there was evidence from, even before all of this came out this year. There's been evidence for years that there was Ray Epps was an insider, and that there was a lot of there was all these people on the ground who were inciting things, and that it was a narrative that was overplayed, and it's still overplayed today, and it gets tiring to a lot of people. I think a lot of people just don't really care about it anymore, and a lot of people like to drum it up for we need to make this side look bad because they did this, and it's just,
well, what it comes down to really is, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's not happening to them. So we have this, we have this 24-hour news cycle now where everything's changing constantly throughout the day on the news cycle. So that unless you're really studying the political philosophies that are driving all of this, most people are just like, oh, what's the big take on the economy today? What's the big take on the foreign threats to our country today? And other than that, they don't pay attention. And I've actually talked about that with another good friend of the show. He goes by JD Cashless on X, but his name is Ken Silva, and he's an investigative journalist. And I've had him on numerous times to talk about different Fed operations, from COINTELPRO to PatCon. And we've talked about how those operations have, really been used to target Americans and set Americans up. And even I had him on, we talked about the very clear Fed op, which is, the Patriot Front. If anybody's not been paying attention, Patriot Front is just clearly a Fed op. They just show up out of nowhere and they get arrested, and then they're right back out doing it again. And it's all a show to suck people in. And so these are things that are actually really important to what you are looking at wanting to do, which is to challenge the status quo. And you decided this year to throw your hat in the ring, without, over exaggerating. I would say probably because of the influence of somebody like Charlie Kirk, who does actively encourage young folks like yourself to go out and get involved in politics, to be involved, no matter what your views are, but to be involved. And so you decided to throw your hat in the ring, but you didn't throw your hat in the ring for your local city council or your school board or even county commission or state state house or state senate. You decided you're going to run for U.S. Congress in the first district, and you're challenging, a Trump darling, Brad Finstad. So, what crazy animal bit you and made you decide that you're going to? Because let's be honest, we both know the way that the two-party system works. You, even without, I mean, have the Democrats declared a candidate to run against Finstad yet?
I do believe Jake Johnson is the candidate.
Okay. So the odds, no offense to you, odds of you being able to beat either one of them, let alone both of them, in a general election next year, are very slim. But so did you get bit by a woolly bear or something? Like, I can't think.
No, I do know the odds are astronomical. It's the idea behind this campaign essentially is it's more about just getting the message out there as it is right now. It's about kind of introducing the idea of a third choice to the equation, because in Minnesota there's not been, like, at least in the past like 10, even 15 years, there's not been a very strong independent cause like out there other than maybe like the weed party. And they were just trying to get elected to legalize marijuana. So,
well, I would challenge that a little bit. The Libertarian Party in Minnesota has been making a lot of progress in Minnesota. Like, so my good friend Rebecca Whiting, she's the chair of the Minnesota Libertarian Party. She had a record number of voters this year. Or in this last general election, she captured a record amount. And that's progress, but it's still not enough for the Libertarian Party itself to get automatically on the ballot, which is really,
right.
The Republicans and the Democrats in Minnesota are very much gatekeeping. They will not take any steps to drop these thresholds for lesser parties to automatically just get on the ballot. All you have to do is declare yourself a Republican or a Democrat, even without being affiliated directly to the party. Just declare yourself, walk in, pay your little fee to be on the ballot, and you get on the ballot. But if you declare as a Constitution Party or a Libertarian or whatnot, they would. You gotta go petition, and you got like 2-week window to petition to get on the ballot, and so you've got your work cut out for you just to be on the ballot.
Yep, I do believe it's, well, for right now, to get on the ballot for just as an individual candidate, it requires 1,000 signatures in between this portion in May in 2026. Now, that's just for the independent candidate. Like you were saying, for parties, it's like you've got this thing where if you're a major party candidate, you're instantly put right on the ballot. And they want it that way because they're the ones in power. They're the ones that are voting those laws into place. So I doubt that they're gonna want to change that anytime soon. But it's a little simpler than some people think, but it is still hard. It's the idea of winning this time around is an astronomical feat. It's just I'd say that in southern Minnesota specifically, I mean, we've had Brad Finstad has been it for a few terms now. It was Jim Hagedorn before him. Then you've had some notable
I think Brad's on his
candidates.
Second term. Yeah.
Is he on his second? Yeah, I do believe. Yeah, I believe he's on his second term now because he was a 2022. Yeah, that's right. So
folks, those of you that are in the chat, I see some people have come in and started to ask some questions. Folks, if you have questions, I'm not going to tell you we won't answer them, but if you have an actual very pressing question or point you'd like to make, as the chat comes alive a little bit more, it can stream by pretty quick, and we're not always going to be able to see it. So even a small super chat of $1.99 is going to make it a lot easier for us to see, especially if it's a legit question or a comment. So like, Let's Mow the Lawn Together says, if you had the party that was outspoken as pro-gun and pro-choice, it might gain some traction. And I think you might find yourself in agreement with that, Oliver. And I would imagine from just, we haven't gotten quite down to that particular point, those two particular points yet. But having talked to you, I kind of feel like, first district, if you might find that Olver would be your guy. And if you're in Minnesota or any other state for that matter, you're going to find yourself, looking towards the Libertarian Party of the U.S. or the Libertarian Party of the state you're in, because they're very much pro 2A and very much we're not getting involved in the abortion issue. And it's not a litmus test for a lot of independents. It's not a litmus test for a lot of for any Libertarian Party. The abortion issue is not a litmus test, but the Second Amendment is, because the Libertarians are constitutional originalists. So they don't touch on abortion because abortion is not talked about in the Constitution. It's neither a right to be granted or taken away. It's a very individual, personal decision that needs to be made from a moral perspective. And so you will find a lot of independents, and there again, pretty much all libertarians will talk to you about the 2A all day long without having to touch on the issue of what's your position on abortion. It's a personal decision. And I might be personally opposed to it, but I got Jeff LaPointe being a smartass saying, yeah, your chat's just blazing by. Well, it does at times, Jeff, and especially when people tune in. So, and it's my channel. If I want to ask people to super chat to ask questions, it's my prerogative. So, you're making the decision to challenge a sitting congressman who has won 2 elections so far. He's got the backing of Donald Trump. You clearly are coming in, you're under the gun to be able to even get on the ballot, to get the signatures. That's tough to do, to get 1,000, even in a town the size of Rochester. Getting 1,000 signatures that can be vetted is difficult. And you are challenging a machine that, let's be honest, especially with all of the rhetoric that's out there right now, one of the big topics that is going, that is, how do I want to say this? 2026 is going to be a year where candidates and geopolitical Zionist Israel are going to be huge. And there's going to be a massive amount of people who are going to want to know where candidates stand on the issue of Israel. And that is a big topic because guys like Brad Finstad, Brad Finstad alone, the best that I can track, AIPAC affiliated donors have given him no less than something like almost $9,000 to $10,000, which doesn't, was nothing compared to guys like Ted Cruz, who's received millions. But AIPAC is interested in winning seats in Minnesota. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be a bit of a, should we say, a hurdle for you to have to overcome when it comes to funding, because AIPAC's not coming to you to offer. And I'm assuming you would say no if they did.
I would say no. Yeah, I would not accept any I'm not accepting any money from large corporations or large political factions like that, or large lobbying organizations. You do see, though, with the Democrats this time with Jake Johnson with his funding, I think that they're really gunning for this seat this next election. The Democrats, I think that they really think that they have a very strong candidate in Jake Johnson. It's just being a math teacher from Mayo High School. I think that they have this almost, to me, it was very strange when I would look at some of his social media posts. It was almost kind of like a Biden era style campaign where
what do you mean there?
So there would just be photos that I would see from his like X account and like things that he'd post. And first of all, everything that I've seen him post on about Democrat talking, like basically everything that he's talked about has come straight from establishment Democrat talking points. His campaign manager, who is, I guess he's a former student of his, worked at the Biden White House as a senior tech advisor. And then there was, there's just been some things. There was the ice cream picture that I noticed. It just very screamed Biden with the vanilla ice cream cone and kind of just acting like I'm cool, I'm hip, I have ice cream. This you should vote for me.
Yes,
attitude.
yes, DFL in Minnesota. Nothing says I'm more hip than ice cream. So, I think that Finstead is vulnerable. I really do. I think that Finstead is very vulnerable, mostly because the Gramscian Marxism of the DFL has taken a foothold in Southeast Minnesota. It has, Rochester is, I don't know, Finstead has no strong positions other than he backs Donald Trump. That's it. That's his strong position. Other than that, he can't be, you can't nail him down to anything, and that's a chief complaint even from Republicans in the first district, is that you really can't get a hold of Brad Finstead. And of course the DFL and, the other leftist progressive organizations are, always calling him out for, not being available to talk. Not that they really want to talk to him at all, not genuinely, but he's not available. You cannot get a hold of Brad Finstead. He is just not there. And I think that with the decisions that we're seeing the Trump administration make right now, I think he is creating a massive amount of vulnerability for his down ballot supporters. When you see him going after people like, Thomas Massey, who is a stalwart of constitutional originalism. He's gone a little bit after Rand Paul. Now he's on the attack against Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it's not like Marjorie Taylor Greene has been like this massive constitutional originalist for the last, she's almost, 12 years now, almost 12 years. MTG has not been just this massive stalwart of constitutionalism. She has been behind Trump on a lot of stuff for a very long time. And Trump's turning on people that have spine. And I think that strengthens people like Massey and Greene and Rand Paul and some of the others. Whereas I think staying incredibly loyal to Trump, especially in a state like Minnesota, is really going to make somebody like Finstead very vulnerable.
Well, and also ignoring kind of the problems that are happening, and not just the problems, but kind of ignoring the hot button topics. A lot of people are very interested in the hot button topics that are going on in politics. And I don't necessarily see Brad ever commenting on those. I do have personal experience because I'm a member of the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce. It was back in, I do believe, October. Was it? No, it was before October. It was this was all the way back in August. I don't know why I was thinking that. But he came to the Mayo Civic Center for a kind of like U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Rochester Chamber of Commerce, like speech thing that he gave. And it was all like you had to pay to come in, even if you were a member of the Chamber of Commerce. There was like no questions that you could really ask him. And then he got on the stage, he gave some points, and then the guy from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce got on and gave some points. And that's basically the most amount that people have gotten out of Finstead in public in a long time. And it was a paid event. It was private. And it was just, it was a little sus, because when we got in there, there were obviously protesters outside the event. And then there were people who did come inside the event, and then they like got up during his speech, and then they'd start like yelling, and then they start like, saying some stuff, and then they got escorted out of the building. That's
commitment though. They paid to get in there to get booted out. That's commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
Props. I might disagree with your philosophy, but props to the commitment.
Yep, it was to pay in to get into the event, and then to get like kicked out of the event. that is commitment to a cause, and it shows you just how much people are kind of just fed up with him ignoring everything. He talks about the same things. Like, I understand that farming is very important in Minnesota. I know a lot of farmers. Farming is but every single comment it's very, and a lot of farmers don't like Brad Finstad. There's a lot of farmers out here that have very alternative like viewpoints as to what's going on with the tariffs and what's happening with a lot of things that are going on in the country, like the country abroad, and the market for crops.
Very conservative farmers are very frustrated with the tariffs. Like, you try being a beef rancher in this country right now, and ask people about the tariffs and the idea that we're going to start importing Argentinian beef at record levels. And there are a lot of farmers and ranchers are very upset about that. And like you said, Finstad cannot be found to say anything. And then of course Jake, and I didn't even know that they had kind of tabbed him for sure. I didn't know that, and we know how the DFL operates. Once they tab him, he's in, the reality is he's not going to say, he's going to say nothing but DFL approved talking points. And that, I think, is what makes Finstad really vulnerable, is that Jake will stay on topic. He'll stay on talking points. Brad's going to stay on loyalism to Trump populism. And people, I want you to understand that, one, I'm not saying my views do not represent Oliver's, and Oliver's views don't necessarily represent those of this platform. But what people do need to understand is that speaking out against Trump level populism does not make a neocon out of a person. It does not make a person a leftist progressive. It's someone like Oliver, someone like me, when we speak out against Trump populism or Trumpism, we're speaking out of a place of principle, saying, like, just because he was better than the alternative doesn't mean that what he's doing is good for us, especially, when we see what he's doing now. When you look at your chances of taking votes away from both Jake and from Brad, you have to really begin to ask yourself, and I'm sure you've done this already, but if you haven't, maybe I'm planning an idea or a thought that you need to really wrestle with. But you have to start seeing yourself as a spoiler in this campaign. Like, if you get on that ballot and you campaign hard and you get some support behind you, let's say you get the Libertarian Party in Minnesota to back you up. Let's say you get some other independent or third parties to get in and step in and campaign for you, coming from both, perspectives. Maybe you get some hardcore constitutional originalists, and maybe you get a few people that are centrist, maybe even some from left of center that agree with you, and they're all out cooperating, campaigning for you. The odds that you beat Brad or Jake are low, but you have the potential to be a spoiler. Are you okay with that? Are you okay if maybe you're a spoiler that takes Finstad out and puts a Jake in? Are you all right with that? Or
at this point, I don't really see it. At least in Minnesota, for instance, I don't necessarily see a difference. I understand that with Democrats being in charge of certain things, they might act towards, let's say, anti-gun policies, which I am, pro Second Amendment all the way. There's so giving up a seat to maybe a Democrat might work in that way, but I feel like that's more of a Republican problem. I feel like that's because their candidate isn't necessarily going out there and actually proclaiming any ideas or talking about any hot button issues. I can be here, be the heel, and maybe even wake some people up and say, hey, this isn't working anymore. We might have to deal with this. Might have to deal with a Jake Johnson candidacy. Might have to, or Brad Finstad might still pull it out and still win. But at least we're kind of out here saying, hey, we're not willing to what was it? There was a word on Ballotpedia. We're not willing to concede anything. We're not willing to, we're done with making concessions to the government because this candidate's better than this, or like, oh, they might not be the best candidate, but this candidate's better than this candidate. And it's just like, I think Americans are kind of sick of that. So
well, yeah,
I'm
a lot
willing
of
to be the
Americans,
heel. Yeah.
a lot of Americans are saying, look, voting for the lesser of two evils just gives you evil.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just okay. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
lesser of two evils, but I'm still getting
Still
evil.
evil.
Yeah, it's like trying to choose between stomach cancer and colon cancer. Like, gee, thanks. Those are my options, and that's really how a lot of voters in Minnesota are feeling. Like, great, I get cancer or cancer.
Yeah,
So,
and if either party was really serious about holding the other, if any party was like really serious about voting for reform or actually holding the other side accountable, you'd see that in legislation. The problem is that we've heard about fraud in Minnesota for years. We've heard about millions of dollars going to different programs, and we're supposed to have investigations in this, and we're supposed to be holding people accountable. That was the Trump administration's message when they came in. They're like, we're going to start holding people accountable. We're going to do this. We're going to come in and we're going to Did really anybody believe that? Like all the way? I guess a few people.
I think there are a
did, but
massive amount of people that believe that. I honestly do. I think there were a massive amount of people because it was sold to them so hard. His first administration, as he ran for that, I'm draining the swamp, I'm ending the deep state, and they they really held on to that Keokuk level commitment. That he was really, he was playing 5D chess, and I think we're up to like 12 or 13D chess now. That every decision that he makes is him just outsmarting the system, and people really did believe it. They really did believe that he was going to come in, he was going to clean house, he was going to shut down all the corruption, and now he's out there telling people that he never said anything about, basically implying that he never promised to end the H-1B visa program, which he did. He said he was going to end it. Even though he had benefited from it, he was going to end the H-1B visas. But now he just comes out the other day and he tells people there aren't enough smart Americans to fill the jobs that we need these people coming into. Like, he literally said we have no talent. He said this. He said this on Fox News, the bastion of the GOP. He told the host, can't remember her name right now. He told the host that we do not have enough smart people to do the job that they want done and end the H-1B visas. So which is it, Donald? Which one is it? You're going to end it, or you're not, because we have enough people, or you're not going to end it because we don't have talented people in this country.
Well, I think we have a real issue with legislation in this country when it comes to, I mean, we have the H-1B issue, but we also have now emerging robotics, AI. People are starting to lose jobs by the tens of thousands. There's issues with like adapting to that. I don't see candidates like Brad Finstead having a speciality in that or anything like,
We currently have the highest amount of unemployment among college graduates that we have ever had in the history of the United States. Basically, since they've been tracking it, the highest amount of unemployment. And he was even asked about bringing in 600,000 Chinese students to fill up our universities. And the host finally pushed back on him enough to say, like, maybe we don't allow that. And he said, well, if we don't allow that, then our university system is going to collapse. And my answer to that is, so?
Yeah,
we've been told.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that as a young man yourself, that the universities are the problem? They're teaching people gender theory and gender studies and underwater basket weaving for the gender queer, and people are graduating with these worthless degrees, and they're blaming people who have worthless degrees for being unemployed. But we don't want the university system to adapt, to change, to start producing actual beneficial degrees. And if you can't do that, then maybe you shouldn't be here. Maybe you shouldn't exist. Ben Shapiro, just the other day, This conservative bastion, Ben Shapiro, said, if you can't afford to buy a house, maybe you don't deserve to live here.
It's so crazy. Yeah, I've seen, and one thing about the universities is that you've got the issue with the political aspect of what they're teaching in education, but you've also got a problem with like black budgets in education, with like
Right.
millions of dollars disappearing into these universities for unknown reasons, and then you have again the 600,000 students immigrating here from China. Does nobody see a possibility for a national security threat? Does nobody see a possibility for, something to happen with that? I mean, we make deals with adversarial nations, and then we aren't suspicious of what's going to
Perfect.
happen with that.
I love that you said that. So yeah, we're going to allow 600,000 Chinese students into the university system in the United States under Trump, who told us that China is our biggest adversary. The biggest threat that we face is China. What? So you're going to allow 600,000 Chinese nationals into our university system for what? Why? What's the purpose of that? Well, yeah, we just shot any chance you had to getting 1,000 signatures, just right out. But so
I'll just
let's
be the
talk a
heel,
little bit.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your constitutional positions. What do you see as, if you're being a purist and an originalist when it comes to the House of Representatives, what is the prescribed role of a member of Congress in the House of Representatives? What is your duty there? What is it you should be focusing on there?
Well, I think you should be focusing on, well, I mean, there's the kind of aspect of just listening to your constituents, as being out there and making sure that you hear what they believe in, and what the majority, not just the majority, but what the minority of your constituents are talking about, and kind of catering, and not just catering, but like explaining your positions, and like coming out and actually being forthwith with people. I feel like that's a big like part of like kind of like almost spirit of the law. Like, you should be out there, going out there and like making sure that people know who you are. You should be public with people. You should hear them out, and you should explain to them your positions, like
But
actually in front of them or to them in some capacity in
but let's hope
Congress.
against let's hope against hope that you beat Jake and you beat Brad and you get up there.
Mhm.
Besides hearing your constituents, both the people who voted for you, and we have to remind so many people who hold office, these public servants, that your constituents aren't just the people who checked your name on a ballot. Your constituents are everybody in your district.
Mhm.
So when you get up there, when you beat Brad and you beat Jake and you're in the House of Representatives, what is your duty as a member of the House of Representatives to your constituents? Besides hearing them, what's your job in Congress? What do you see as your
I'd
job
say
in
it's to
Congress?
protect them from government overreach. It's to keep government in check, to use the legislative, to be a part of the legislative branch that keeps the other branches in check, to make sure that the Constitution isn't being violated with legislation. And I would say keeping, like, I would say also maybe even investigating constitutional violations, and coming in and kind of like the laws that Congress should pass are laws that are essentially just, we have criminal justice laws, right? We have laws against murder, we have laws against robbery, we have laws against all of these like criminal actions. But there are laws that are in the books, like banning hemp or banning things like that. I don't think that's within Congress's purview. I don't think Congress, like, especially with something that's like a plant that's like hemp, where you can farm it and you can create an industry with it, is like we were talking about before with the economy, with commerce, and how it should be a free market, and the government should not have really any regulation over the economy and what people can do with their money, what people can do with their business. I think that I believe that a congressman should stand there stalwart in defense of the Constitution. I think that that's the main role, is to make sure that your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, everything all the way through should not be tampered with, essentially. I mean, and
So you
also,
would
I
see
mean,
yourself
proposing amendments, I guess.
you would see yourself then in and I'm going to put words in your mouth and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you would see yourself to some degree as second coming of a Thomas Massie type then.
Well, I definitely agree with a lot of Thomas Massie's points on the Constitution.
I'm glad you get to call him Tommy. What are you guys on like?
Sorry.
He's
yeah, no. So
Tommy and I are tight.
Yeah. No. Thomas Massie, to me, he fits an independent bill, and I think he's trying to change the GOP for like a more constitutional like approach to Republican politics, but I mean, there's every weight in the GOP against him. They're coming at him with trying to primary him out of his seat. We've seen it. We saw it with in New York recently. There was the Zohran Mamdani election, and the Republicans, instead of backing the Republican candidate, they backed the Democrat candidate just to spite another candidate. I don't necessarily, if Thomas Massie becomes the primary candidate for his district again, then what's to say that the Republicans don't endorse the Democrat against him? Like establishment GOP types.
The establishment GOP, if they don't get him unseated in the primary, they're definitely going to back his Democrat challenger. They're 100% going to back his Democrat challenger. Trump has leveled so much hatred on him, but AIPAC's already invested millions in trying to unseat Massie. And this is why I'm so tired of hearing Republicans defend AIPAC and defend geopolitical Zionist Israel, because this is just the meddling in politics is just ridiculous. It just absolutely is. If it doesn't infuriate you, I don't know that you even have a heart to see that.
Yeah.
And they have to get rid of Massie, because Massie outperformed. And this is what I don't think people realize. And I think this is very pertinent to your campaign. Massie outperformed Donald Trump in his own district. And people are like, how can you outperform? Like, Trump won his district. Right. Donald Trump won Thomas Massie's district, but Thomas Massie got more votes in his district than Donald Trump did as the winner of his district, which means Thomas Massie pulled in people who are so enamored of his political positions, and rightly so, that he pulled in people who voted against Trump. Let that sink in.
And it's just, it shows a misalignment in the voting base. You've got people,
and I think that's voted a poll for you.
Yeah, and I mean, Thomas Massie, he stands for constitutional values, and Trump has kind of, in the past, in his prior administration, he's actually stamped on some constitutional values with anti-gun regulation. He's gone after, we know the COVID lockdowns are partially he's partially responsible for a lot of the things that happened during COVID, with the lockdowns and the shutdowns, and kind of just pushing forth that message. It's not necessarily just about what you do in Congress, like legislatively, or, when you're voting. It's about what you say, and it's about how you present yourself, and it's about how you it's about how you actually talk about a topic. If you're not willing to go to if you're not willing to actually represent constitutional values with your speech and with your actions, then it kind of then people aren't going to be as interested in you if they have constitutional values. And Thomas Massie does, so his voter base voted for him, and a lot of them would not vote for Trump because he's also seen as a more polarizing candidate. I was a Trump voter beforehand, but that was more or less just because I'm not.
I voted for the guy twice.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Democrat talking platform. It's just, to me, it's just like Republicans, but they're more. It's like corporatocracy. It's essentially like, we're just going to spout the same exact talking point over again.
You got me stumbling here, because I just this is near and dear to my heart. People who watch my channel enough, and by the way, for those of you, especially those that have come over from Vet Nation after Skipper ended the show, we really appreciate you coming in. Even if you're lurking, please, if you're lurking, say hi. Make sure that you ask questions, leave a comment, share this out. because even though this is a Minnesota specific campaign that we're talking about, this is this grassroots reality. And I want you to repeat, since I probably ruined your train of thought, I want you to repeat what you just said that made me interrupt you, because I want people to hear this again. Do you remember what you were saying?
I think my train of thought got interrupted a little bit. Let me really think. Well, it was about what was I talking
Basically,
about government. Yep. Go ahead.
The grassroots nature of the positions, and how it's not just about the, how do I want to say it? It's not just about being your party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's basically what it comes
it's
down
not
to.
just about being, well, it's not just about being like politically advantageous to your party. It's not just about being like, oh, I'm a Republican, so I have to support these exact viewing points or whatever. Thomas Massie himself, he supports kind of what he says Republicans support on a general basis. Like he believes that Republicanism should stand for constitutional values, should stand for what he believes in. But we've seen that the establishment GOP stays against him because of political values that are, or not political values. I think a lot of they don't really have political values. They have lobbying groups.
I think that's no, their values are strictly political.
Okay.
That's
right.
it. Their values are strictly political. In other words, what is most advantageous to the Republicans? And the Democrats are the exact same way, strictly political values. Yep. Whatever best serves their political end goal. And their political end goals are, we want the power. Thomas Massie,
and Democrats,
and I hear this in you.
Yeah. And Democrats
you don't want the power.
Like
you want the last state. Yeah.
Oh, was that?
You don't want power, and Thomas Massie doesn't want power. He wants power out of the hands of the political class. He wants the power in the hands of the people, where it belongs. And I hear that in a lot of what you're saying. Like when you said, if I get elected, when I get elected, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to watch out for the people and make sure that the Constitution is being honored and being cherished and being, strictly applied. And it's easy to sit here and say that. Honestly, it is. It's incredibly easy to sit here and say that when you get elected to go up there and then not necessarily have to apply it. And that's what's been interesting with Massie, is that Massie's actually applied that. And he still ended up, I think his voting record with the Republicans is like 85% of the time he votes with the Republicans and votes MAGA.
And it's And it's impressive because the thing is with the Republican Party, with him being a part of that, he already he has like an establishment backing that like expects something from him, but he doesn't give it to them. And so, and especially when they expect something from you, they really hate when you don't give it to them. It's like the IRS tax season. They don't they don't want somebody to come in on their ticket and say things that are antithetical to their party platform. So when he does, and he comes in and he's like, I'm a Republican, I'm saying these things, it makes them look bad. And then they're sitting there scrambling, wondering like, well, what do? Do we just get rid of him? And then that's essentially what they're trying to do with Trump. I mean, you've got Lindsey Graham, you've got Ted Cruz, you've got a lot of these like, which honestly enough, I mean, Ted Cruz kind of has some credit for that hemp bill. I mean, he did vote against the, what was it? The regulations in that resolution. So, I mean, he has some point there, but other than that, he's basically the same as a lot of GOP establishment talking points, like with coming down on anybody that disagrees with foreign lobbying, disagrees with lobbying in general. It's just, there's with Thomas Massie, it's
the
really
APAC thing again.
Important for people like him to exist.
Oh, absolutely. I think that we need 1,000 more people like in at the federal level that recognize. So I'm just going to ask this: is abortion an issue that should be addressed at the federal level?
I don't think so. I think at this level, the states have I think they have a better handle on getting, because right now abortion is such a complicated issue in America between a lot of, you've got factions that are willing to go like to the extreme on either side. And I think that if you can kind of calm tensions about it over time by allowing individual communities to maybe even start to create their own legislation on it and start to kind of like, I get that that kind of might lead towards a form of balkanization, but I think in the long term, you're going to get a bit more of a cooler head in the country overall than just constantly having Democrats and Republicans yelling at each other about what's right with abortion, what's not right with abortion. And I think that if you can get that at the state level and you can get people to talk about it with individually between, the more you localize government, I say you can hold it more accountable. So the more that you localize an
Perfect.
issue, the more you can discuss it amongst other people and kind of, work it out.
So it'd be fair for me to kind of assess or summarize a little bit of what you view your role as a member of the House of Representatives being when or if you get elected, in that toss the power back down to the state, county, and municipal levels. It really to do the constitutional thing, which is to stand in the way of the federal government passing any more laws, period, and look at the most local, which once again is the municipal levels and the county levels, and say, no, this stuff should be in your hands. We're not doing this anymore. We're going to defend our borders, and we're going to, keep our military, ready to defend our country.
And then, it does say what the
Go
roles
ahead.
of the federal government are in the preamble of the Constitution. It's just, domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. It's very very basic things. The federal government has
Right.
its fingers in way too many things these days, and it has nothing to do with what the founders wrote in the Declaration.
And it
or in the
always comes back
Constitution.
to them going, yeah, but the Commerce Clause. But we have these rights because of the Commerce Clause. Let's talk a little bit about common defense, and tranquility. Do you see yourself, and I want to make sure that we emphasize, and that I emphasize, I am not personally an isolationist. I don't believe that the United States should exist in a vacuum where the only people that we do business with are Americans, and we shouldn't be trading with other countries. I'm not an isolationist. I am an anti-interventionist. There's a massive difference. I do not believe that the United States should be running around the world using economics to enforce our will or our policies on other countries. I also do not believe that it's the role of the United States to be sending our military to fight wars or conflicts in other countries, no matter what those conflicts might be. So I want to make that clear. I am an anti-interventionist, and I'm an anti-American imperial presidency. In other words, I don't think the president should be able to dictate who, should the president be in charge of the military? Yes. Should the president be able to use things like the War Powers Act or the Authorization for Use of Military Force, the AUMF? I don't believe that the AUMF should exist, whereas the president can say, oh, these people are terrorists, so therefore we're going to shoot boats out of the water in international waters, in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea, or the Eastern Atlantic. I don't think that's the role of the United States military, and I don't think that's the role of the president. Would you support AUMF? Would you vote for continuing an authorization for use of military force? Or would you stand up and say, I will not support the use of the United States military anywhere in the world apart from a declaration of war?
Yeah, I support with Congress holding on to war powers. I believe that declaration of war is necessary to use military assets to attack another country. I think we've been using it we've been using war powers given to the president for a long time now to just go into other countries and drop bombs without really any consequences. And it doesn't seem to work out in our favor. We end up going into countries, destabilizing them, and ending up in 20-year ground wars. So,
gee, What could you possibly be talking about?
Yeah, we have, and I think it's also a matter of geography. We live in the Western hemisphere of the world. We don't live in the Eastern hemisphere of the world. I think a lot of issues that happen halfway across the world can be dealt with other nations, that they can be, other nations like Germany, the UK, France, Spain, all of these countries, they have militaries. They have assets that they can use if they want to go in and do these missions to whatever they want to do for democracy. They go into these countries and they want to do something with it. That's
You
their
don't believe that we could spread democracy at the point of a gun?
no.
Oh.
No, it's been proven time and time again. I mean, we've been doing the same thing in the Middle East since 1953. So we overthrew the democratically elected leader in Iran, 1950s. Then we've supported the Mujahideen through the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, turned into Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. We've had all these wars that we've basically started, and we've lost countless of American lives. We've lost trillions of dollars. I mean, what was it? 1.3 trillion from Social Security was spent in the Iraq War during Bush's administration. There was, I mean, we've gone through all of these conflicts because we went in there and intervened. Like you're saying, anti-intervention. That's where I generally stand. I believe that matters that happen in the Western hemisphere are a little bit more pressing to America, but I still don't think that justifies like use of force in, let's say, like South American countries or Central American countries without Congress coming in and saying, hey, we should authorize like a military declaration of war on a country.
So I'm going to propose this. So let's say you're in Congress right now and the president's saying, hey, look, Venezuela is a problem. We need to do something about that. And you're not saying there's no way you wouldn't vote for declaring war on Venezuela. You would need a tangible, objective, substantive argument about why it's in the best interest of the United States to go to war with Venezuela.
Yeah, I personally am not I'm anti-useless war. If people pose a threat to the United States, I believe that the United States military is there to protect the United States, and that does include, if we really want to look at the drug traffic that's coming from these countries in South America, we can consider it a national emergency, and we can we can come together and we can say, hey, this is a real problem, and we don't have necessarily the law enforcement capacity to deal with this. And these are international criminals coming to our country and leaving these drugs and selling these drugs to American citizens, which kills thousands of Americans every year. And we could do something about this using our military. I believe, yeah, it requires Congress to come in and say, at least come in with some form of declaration on and like designating these groups as an enemy of the United States, declaring war on them, that kind of that sort of instance. Now, whether we can link it to the government of Venezuela, that is a good question. I don't want Americans to go to some kind of, like, I've heard this from the GOP rhetoric over this. I don't want Americans to go to a ground war in Venezuela. I think that sounds horrible. I think that that's not the best policy that we should be aiming towards. I think using economics, like in terms
you
of
said
like
something key. You said you don't believe that the United States should be putting ground troops on the ground, boots on the ground, as the Iraq War, phrase was. You don't think there should be U.S. boots on the ground in Venezuela affecting a regime change, which, by the way, they're trying. They've admitted that they've got special operations and through the CIA and whatnot are in Venezuela trying to affect regime change. But you don't believe we should have boots on the ground. Do you think staging the largest carrier group with the largest carrier in the United States military fleet off the coast of Venezuela, do you think that's a good sign?
I don't think it's a good sign.
What's that signal, and what does it communicate?
I think it signals coming conflict. I do agree with showing the United States has had a history of, we have the Monroe Doctrine from a long time. This, the Western Hemisphere is kind of, when it comes to first world powers, you have, like I was saying with the Middle East, if France, Germany, whatever one of those countries wants to go deal with what's happening in their hemisphere of the world,
Let them deal with it. Yeah.
let them do that. But over here, this is, it's the Americas. We have North America, we have Central America, and we have South America. And a lot of our industry is tied up through here. Plus, it's closer to us. So I would say maintaining trade relations and maintaining a dominance over the Western hemisphere is definitely a big part of keeping America secure.
You must have
because you have interests like
seen,
China moving into South.
You must have seen Buster's first comment, which is right, but it's a way to solidify our power, our dominance over our hemisphere isn't even a question. I would agree that our dominance over our hemisphere isn't a question. I agree, it isn't a question. We do have dominance. But then he goes on to say this, that if you believe in American ideals, you'd think we should dominate the planet. And I'm sorry that I haven't been able to share everybody's comments, but I think these are in keeping with what we're talking about right now. How do you respond to what, because I know I have a response to what Buster's saying here. You'd think we should dominate the planet. Do you think that American ideals mean we dominate the planet?
No, because, I think yes, but I think the way that it's being phrased is not correct. Because what we're arguing against is sending Americans to die in wars that make no sense, that we created, that we started, that we destabilized the region, and we went in there and we created economic realities that caused war to happen. And so now, and the real problem is that power comes through. I'm not saying that our military has to be powerless. If we maintain a Western hemisphere homogenous power, and we control the Western hemisphere in terms of just being the dominant superpower in the Western hemisphere, there's plenty of resources for us here. There's plenty of, our goals as Americans should be to keep our nation free, to keep our nation prosperous, to keep it defendable, and to advance it and to progress it. And I mean, dominating the world would require you to invade other countries, would require you to go in and change, unless you
it's forcing our views of constitutional republicanism. You have to use military force to force that onto other countries. You have to.
And it just doesn't work, because people will rebel against you. You will have, for decades upon decades, you'll have conflict, you'll have revolutions, you'll have issues, and you have to send more troops, and you have to do. It's a constant recurring cycle, and none of it has to do with us. We live here in America. There's nothing that really happens over in Syria or in Iraq or in Afghanistan really has a very big impactful. It's not very impactful on the average American.
But Buster says, if you think an idea is bad, where should it be allowed? Where should predators be allowed to go unconquered? There's the old saying that when you go about, I think it was Jefferson's, and when you go about the world looking for predators, you're gonna, Jefferson was far more eloquent. You're gonna end up entangled in fighting predators everywhere. It is not the duty of the United States to go around slaying all the predators of the world. It's just, our blood and treasure are not worth sacrificing to stop a predator in Iraq or to protect Israel. If you want to deal with your predators, deal with your predators. It's not our job.
And we have a lot of issues here domestically with predators in our own country that we should be dealing with first before we're going out and sailing the high seas looking for predators all the way around the world. Now, the thing is we also look at the wars that we've been a part of for the last 30 to 40 years. The predators that were there were created by the destabilization that we caused in those countries. If it wasn't, I would say, if you have, let's say, like who are the big enemies of the war on terror? You have the Taliban, you have Al Qaeda, you have all these terrorist groups, but you can all link that back to the Mujahideen. You can link it back to what we did in those times, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, it's really right there in front of our faces. Has interventionism worked? We've had 60. I mean, we can go back to Vietnam if we really want to go back to Vietnam.
We go back to the end of World War II.
Yeah.
World War II was the last declared war the last war that the United States fought in that was a legal war was World War II, because Congress, for whatever your views might be, declared war on the Axis powers. We have not declared a war in that time since the end of world, over 80 years. We have not declared a war, and yet we have sacrificed blood and treasure all over the world, and the world is not a better place for it. It is not a better. It is as destabilized as it has ever been.
In a utopian viewpoint, would I like to see American ideals, freedom of speech, Second Amendment, everything spread around the world, and everybody likes democracy, likes a republic, first of all, likes to have their constitutional republic, likes to have they like to have freedom. The ideas that make up our Constitution. If we could spread that around the world through culture, I think it's possible. But going to another country and destabilizing it, I feel like it causes more issues than it solves. And we've seen that. We see that people become more radicalized, people become more hateful. And then you've got the Houthis, then you've got Hamas, and you've got Hezbollah, you've got all these different...
Let's just point at bin Laden. But everybody told us that, Trump got up there and beat the war drum saying that they hate us because of our freedom. No, that's not why. That we were not attacked on September 11th because of our freedom. They used our freedom as a means to attack us. But bin Laden stated very clearly that his reason for doing what he did was because of American interventionism in the Middle East, for having troops occupying Saudi Arabia, for having troops occupying still at the point in Iraq, in Kuwait. That was the reason he wanted. And we taught him that. We taught bin Laden, we taught the Mujahideen how to suck in a global superpower, the Soviet Union, into a protracted war that destroyed the Soviet Union. That we destroyed the Soviet Union by proxy with the Mujahideen, by sucking the Soviet Union into a war that they couldn't win. And then they turned around, not the Soviet Union, bin Laden and Al-Qaeda turned around and used that exact same tactic on the United States, not because they thought that the Twin Towers falling was going to destroy the United States, but he knew he could bankrupt the United States and suck us into a war through bloodthirsty politicians. And he was exactly right. We lost more troops in the war than people that were, by the time you take into all the casualties, to include the 22 a day that take their lives to this day after being out of the military and being in war zones, we've lost more troops from the 20 plus years of the global war on terror than we lost people on September 11th of 2001. And we are no better off for it. We are no stronger economically. We are no stronger socially. We're not stronger culturally. Our position around the world has been weakened. The dollar is worthless. Countries all over the world are divesting of the dollar. We are in a position where we have to continue to fight. Because if we don't, then we admit that everything that we've been doing for at least the last 20 plus years has been wrong. Skipper, my co-host from Veteran Nation, popped in, must have ended his show. Skipper, thank you for that super chat. And the boom, I'm assuming that boom is for Oliver, because Oliver is incredibly smart. I will deny that I said that if you try to clip that out later on and use it against me. So, and I know we got really hung up on the issue, but I really think that number one issue in Congress is war powers. It's absolutely war powers. That is the one thing that we send people to Congress for, is to watch out for us and to protect us, in the sense of why are we investing in this? And Congress has been failing. It has been failing. It has been failing us for 82 years, but it has definitely been failing for 20 plus years since September 11th of 2001. It's just been failing us. It's been allowing us to get sucked into protracted regime change conflicts all over the world, and we're not better off for it. We have not created a single democracy, if you want to use that term. We have not created a single constitutional democracy since the end of World War II.
Well, and if you want to talk about like wargaming, if we wanted to be conquerors, we haven't really like the results from our military conquests around the world have been disastrous. We've not held on to anything. We've not taken anything from it. And we've lost people. Like there's thousands of American families out there that are looking around. You know, they don't have a brother or a son or a father anymore because they went to war and they died in a war that was caused by our government. And I think that's a real problem. I think that it's real. I know veterans. I know people have come back from Afghanistan. People have come back from Iraq, and it really, I mean, they have different experiences, and sometimes they're, you know, even though they went there and it wasn't the best thing, they come back with experiences, but they still look at it like, why were we there? Why are we sending our youngest, our strongest? Why are we sending them to go to these countries and do these things that don't benefit the American people? We can talk about like maybe securing the petrodollar like around the world with Saudi Arabia and all that, but that's not even true anymore. And besides that, you just look at the value for what Americans can buy. You can look at the economy. You can look at everything. Why are we focused on endless war, going after all of these countries and, you know, essentially playing ball with the rest of the world? It's kind of like a meat shield. And yet we have all these problems here at home. And it's like, I feel like we should be focused on that specifically. And we should not be there just constantly encouraging other countries to go to war with each other because we'll back them up. I think that's a real problem.
A perfect example of this, of the failed war conflict policy, whatever you want to say, is that the leader of ISIS, who we were fighting for 20 years, ISIS and Al Qaeda, the leader of ISIS is now the approved American proxy president of Syria, a man who was beheading Marines and soldiers and airmen and Navy SEALs, a man who personally beheaded American soldiers, is now taking meetings with Donald Trump in the White House.
And wasn't he the same president that slid up? Yeah, wasn't he the same president that slid a picture in front of was the leader of the Taliban? Said, "This is your house. I'm going to blow you up in it." You know, and now he's hosting Syrian former Al Qaeda leaders inside the White House.
No, but Buster, I appreciate your comments, Buster. If you would ever like to come on the show and debate this with me, I would love to have you on. I would gladly sit down. I am not making an emotional appeal. I am making factual appeals to the reality of what these wars have been. And that's why I wanted to talk to Oliver about this, because that is the primary job of members of Congress. One, to focus on whether or not we're going to go to actual war, not just projecting power around the world under authorization for the use of force. Two, it's to protect the American people from unconstitutional laws. And both of those issues are incredibly deep constitutional issues. So, Buster, if you'd ever like to come on the show and have this friendly debate, not hostile, but if you ever want to come on the show and have this friendly debate, you can shoot me an email, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. I would gladly have you on, set aside time to have this conversation about American interventionism around the world and how it has failed us. I am not a slouch on this topic. I am very well versed. Oliver, we're coming up on 6 minutes away from being on for 2 hours, and I'm sure I'm sure that I could do this all day. Just because I tell people my job is my side hustle, and this is what I would much rather be doing. So folks, if you want to help the show full time, I could use more channel members, by the way. Give us a summation of, a brief summation of where you're at on this, where you see yourself going. And like I said, brief, so we can see if we can come in under that 2 hour window. And let's set up a time to have you back on and actually talk about your platform, actual planks of the platform.
Yep. Well, I'm going to be increasing, going out there and starting handing out flyers, handing out door hangers. I've got volunteers that are willing to help me out. We just recently got voter roll records, so we can now go and find people, call people, go around and kind of get the message out there more. We're going to be ramping things up going into 2026. I think that's really when we're trying to get the message out there the most, because right now, even though politics is a heavy hitting issue, there's still a lot of people who are kind of waiting for the election year to come around. So going into that, I'm just here to try and represent a third voice, just trying to go in there and say, hey, you don't have to vote for Democrats. You don't have to vote for Republicans, like if you don't want to. And then it's a message. It's the idea that they're not going to do anything for you. You voted it. There was a teacher that I had in Kellogg Middle School. He said, the definition of insanity is just doing something over and over and over again, and then never not getting a new result, and then just continuing to do it over and over again.
He stole that, by the way. That wasn't just him.
Yeah. Yeah. And then but it's just the case with what's happening in America today. We have the same candidates running for office over and over again. And then when the next guy comes in, he's basically the same guy, just in a different suit. And
yeah, absolutely.
We do have some good contenders out there. We do have Thomas Massey. We do have a lot of people out there with independent voices, but what really needs to come forth right now, I think, is like just a strong independent message. Just like,
absolutely,
we don't want your politics anymore. We don't want foreign lobbyists in our government. We don't want corporate lobbyists in our government. We don't want you to just make empty promises and then not pass anything. So
yeah,
that's essentially where I'm coming from, and where we're going to be going for the next year up until 2026.
Yeah, I definitely like to have you back on, and to do an actual platform breakdown sometime. So, like I said, I want to be able to get you out of here. I'm going to put you in the green room, and I'm going to close the show up and get us out. And so you stick around. I'll talk to you for just a few seconds or a few minutes afterwards. Thank you for your time today. It was really great to get to know more about you. Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, don't say that now. Folks, passionate young man. I think he really loves this republic, and he wants to see it do well. Folks, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I know this was, not a sexy topic. Everybody is always looking for something that's going to be really spicy. And sometimes we have that on this channel, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's just, it's just simple conversations. And I really look forward to getting to know him more. I definitely want to get him plugged into some people that would be able to support. And I do happen to have some connections and know some people. So maybe we can do that, because I definitely would love to see anybody but Brad Finstead or a DFLer go to Congress for the state of Minnesota for the 1st District. Really appreciate everybody that tuned in, all my channel members, channel subscribers, all of that. Skipper, thank you for the super chat. And by the way, everybody, tomorrow at 12:30 Central, Skipper and Kahanu AVA, we're going to be sitting down with a veteran Marine who is a libertarian but running independent for Congress. We're going to be talking to him on our Vet Nation Live tomorrow over on Vet Nation. So make sure you tune in, and I will try and have a link here for that. So as I always end the show, folks, this is all about you guys. It's about our freedom. So fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-minus 30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Secondary guidance systems engaged. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.